You worked harder than everyone around you. So why did they get ahead first? Level 1. You heard it since childhood. Work hard and you'll be successful. So you did. You woke before the sun. You slept after everyone left the party. You sacrificed weekends like they were currency. You counted grind as character. And the truth? You kept believing it. Until the world started contradicting your faith. Friends floated ahead. People you barely noticed were miles in front. Some of them never looked exhausted. Some of them seemed to have luck written on their backs. You asked yourself the quiet, dangerous question. What if the lie isn't failure? What if the lie is the story we've all been told about success? You kept your jaw tight and your calendar full. You assumed the gap would close, but it didn't. Instead, it widened. And that gap began to feel personal. It felt like proof that your sacrifices were invisible. Level 2. At 22, grit was everything. You took every job, every side hustle, every late-night course. You were the first to raise your hand. You believed success was a straight line. Effort, consistency, reward. It worked, at first. Micro wins, small checks, praise from strangers. That subtle high of momentum. Enough to convince you the rule was real. So you doubled down. More hours, more tasks, more hustle. You convinced yourself the compounding would do the rest. You didn't see the cost. Sleep got thin. Relationships frayed. Your calendar became armor. Busy became identity. And busy felt like progress. Until you met the exceptions. People skipping steps and still winning. People with fractured attention and better outcomes. They didn't look like role models. They looked like cheats. Level 3. Comparison became a poison. You scrolled success into your brain. You ran the highlight reel on loop. Entrepreneurs, creators, investors. They were winning. You were working. You blamed yourself. Then you tried harder. You sacrificed more. You chased more badges, certificates, side gigs, metrics. You were exhausted. Not for lack of trying, but because trying was the thing. One night, you lay staring at the ceiling. You weren't tired from failure. You were tired from proof-seeking. You wanted evidence your suffering mattered. Validation became the engine. And it's a cruel fuel. Because the world doesn't reward proof of pain, it rewards outcomes. You were beginning to understand that the applause wasn't for endurance. It was for meaning. Level 4. Then you met an older man, quiet, unbothered, practically invisible in any room. He'd done things you wanted, stable, calm, successful in a way that didn't shout. You asked the question that had become a whisper in your brain. What's the secret? He laughed, soft and clear. The world doesn't pay for effort, he said. You frowned. He held your gaze. The world pays for value. The words landed like a punch. He walked you through a simple idea. Someone digging a hole for 10 hours isn't worth more than the person who solves the problem in 10 minutes. Effort is not currency. Value is. Not effort itself, but the results that change something for someone. You felt that word, value, like a new lens. Everything blurred into focus. You saw the hours you'd been counting, and you saw so few of them had actually moved the needle. Level 5. So you changed the question. Instead of asking, how hard should I work, you asked, what problem am I solving? You stopped doing everything that looked productive. You got ruthless. You cut tasks that made you feel busy, but did nothing for outcomes. You learned to measure by effect, not by input. You learned to ask, who benefits? How big? How often? You found leverage, tools, systems, other people's attention. You started designing work around outcomes. No more grinding for its own sake. You focused your energy where it multiplied. You became selective. You began to say no with a quickness that felt foreign. Every no was a quiet investment in what mattered. Time got sharper. Decisions got easier. Your calendar stopped being a trophy case for exhaustion. It became a map. Level 6. Then the test arrived. A project that would have once consumed you. Old you would have worked for months. You would have micromanaged, double-checked, triple-checked. This time, you did it differently. You reversed engineered the outcome. You stripped the project to what actually moved the meter. You outsourced the rest. You automated where it made sense. You negotiated rough edges instead of polishing every detail. You focused on the 20% that created 80% of the value. And then the strange thing happened. In a fraction of the time you used to invest, you shipped something far more powerful than anything your old grind produced. Not because you grew smarter overnight, not because you lucked into a win, because you learned the map the rest of the room ignored. You were no longer trading hours for status. You were trading leverage for outcomes. The result hit the market. It landed. People paid. People noticed. You felt the difference. Calm, not frantic. You'd stopped proving yourself to anyone. You were creating something people couldn't ignore. Level 7. Remember the line you were sold? Work hard and you'll be successful. It's not a lie. It's incomplete. Hard work is the vehicle, not the destination. Millions hustle. Few create extraordinary results. The difference isn't sweat, it's direction. So before you add another hour to tomorrow, ask, are you climbing faster or are you climbing the right wall? Are you building value or are you signaling effort? If you can't answer, you're still inside the lie. Rewrite the rule. Let effort be intentional. Aim at outcomes, not exhaustion. Make your work a lever, not a badge. And if you're willing to pivot, if you're willing to focus, you won't need to prove your worth with late nights. The market will prove it for you. That's the real secret. The world doesn't pay for effort. The world pays for value. Now go solve something worth paying for.